Good afternoon. We welcome you to the Senate Committee on Education this fine Friday afternoon. And we've got some good bills to hear today, and we appreciate those that are here with us. We will first start with if the Secretary will please call the roll.
Vice Chair Dondar-Loop.
Here.
Senator Hardy. Senator Hammond. Senator Lang.
Here.
Senator Buck.
Here.
Senator Dunyate. Chair Dennis.
Here, and just mark them here as they get here. I know that Senator Hardy, I think, will be late, and Senator Dunyate will be here shortly. So, all right.
Chair.
Yes.
Chair. If
Yeah.
you could excuse me, I have to go to my bill hearing,
Okay. Yes.
and I'll be back.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we are going to start, actually, let me go over this. So for everybody that's in person and online, please keep yourselves muted when not speaking and silence your electronic devices. We did start with quorum. I just want to make sure, even though I know we have people coming in and out today, so we're at that time of session where that's going to happen a lot probably. For all individuals present in our meeting room, please always keep your face and coverings on and maintain social distancing. Committee information is available on Nellis if you haven't accessed it yet, but it is available through our website, and you can watch our meetings through Nellis or to the legislature's YouTube channel. Also, those wishing to provide testimony or public comment must register to participate through Nellis and select their preferred method. If you register to make your comments by phone, you will receive an email confirmation with call-in information. You may also submit written comments as outlined in the agenda. And when testifying, make sure you state and spell your name and affiliation, if any. And just a reminder, if we're asking questions, every time you answer, you need to just identify yourself so that way the record's clear. And I'm going to take public comment at the end of the meeting, and I will limit it to 2 minutes per person. You may also submit your full comments in writing and briefly summarize them in spoken testimony. So with that, I'm going to go in a different order than what we have. And I'll just tell you now so that you can be prepared. I'm going to start with AB 338, and then AB 109. Then I will do 419 and 420, and we will finish with AB 68. So with that, I will open the hearing on AB 338. And I know we have Assemblyman, it's Oren Liquor, right? Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for being with us today, and we turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. David Orient-Licker, Assembly District 20 in Las Vegas and Henderson. And this bill, Assembly Bill 338, is basically a tweak of AB 34 from 2 years ago, for those who were there for that. AB 34 was a bill brought by the Treasurer to expand the office authority to invest state funds. They had a range of investments in U.S. securities and bonds, and this allowed for investment in bonds of foreign countries and banks and corporations, and also supranational groups like, I think, the International Monetary Fund is an example. And this was done to allow for greater return, more diversification of the portfolio, and also to minimize risk. As you have a broader portfolio, you can reduce your risk as well. So the step was taken to say, investing in foreign bonds is a safe thing to do. We can increase returns. Other states are doing it. We can do it too. And this just tweaks two aspects of the authority of the Treasurer to invest overseas. And one is to allow for what are called private placement bonds. As you'll see on, I think it's page 3, where line 14, the deletion of publicly traded. And that's done in 4 places for the 4 different pools of funds the Treasurer manages. And the idea here, we're seeing both corporations and banks and governments that issue bonds are doing more private placement. And what that's about is instead of going, well, they sell them directly and they don't go through, well, they're not publicly traded, I guess is the answer. So what it means for the government that's issuing it, and as I say, they're becoming more common by governments and corporations, is even though they back them in the same way with the same promise and pledge that they do their publicly traded bonds, they don't have to go through the same regulatory hoops because they're selling them to very sophisticated investors like treasurers' offices, pension funds, university endowments, people who know what they're doing, and so they don't go through the same regulatory hoops, even though they're still registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. That means they can get them out faster, and it's less expensive them to issue the bond. So it saves them money, and it gets them out faster. And in return, they pay a higher interest rate. So for us, it means if we do a private placement, we might get an extra 0.5% or % return. But the credit rating is no different. If it's a AA bond, it's still AA, and so on. So that's the publicly traded part. The second part is we currently require a AA credit rating. And I'm going to show you, if we could bring up a slide, I'll show you that actually we're an outlier in that respect. The slide will show you, is it up? Not yet. It's, hopefully you got it as an exhibit, but what it shows is other states that allow these kinds of investments, and there are quite a few that do, including our neighbors, Arizona, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, and other states, Ohio and Illinois. When these states set the minimum credit rating, they set it at either single A or triple B. And what that's about is if you look at the different credit ratings, they go from triple C at the bottom all the way up to triple A. And a key distinction is triple B and above are so-called investment grade bonds. And as long as you're in the investment grade category, you're being very prudent and safe. And that's why Arizona, Colorado, Georgia, and Illinois say to their treasurer, you can invest as long as it's triple B. Utah, New Mexico, Ohio, Oklahoma, Louisiana say, well, single A, a little bit more cautious. But the reality is the difference between triple A, single A, double A is trivial, or I'm not even sure it's statistically significant. They're all about the same range. It's when you drop below triple B that you start to see a bump in risk. So going from double A to single A just brings us in line with other states and still keeps us being very conservative. So those are the two changes, and be happy to take any questions.
Questions? I think you pretty much answered. There's really only those two things, and you answered as far as the publicly traded versus privately traded. What's the risk between the two?
So David Orient Liquor, for the record, there's no difference in risk. They both have the same, backed in the same way. The difference for us is because they're not publicly traded, they're less liquid. So if we were trading in bonds on a daily basis, it would be a problem that you can't go out and sell it. But when we invest in bonds, we hold them to maturity. So there's really no loss for us in losing the liquidity, but we get the extra return that the country offers for other investors who might want to trade in them. That's the trade-off for them. But for us, we don't lose any. There's no difference in risk. It's only a liquidity difference.
Okay, thank you. And you addressed this also. I believe that the was it the triple B versus A? But we're only suggesting to go to A in this legislation. Is that correct?
That's correct. David Orient Liquor, for the record. This only proposes single A. As I say, this just gives us an extra margin of safety. I think other states are probably being reasonable and going to triple B, but I don't think that's necessary.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Okay, so let's go to Anyone wishing to give testimony in support here in the room? Don't see anybody coming forward, so if we could check to see if we have someone on online that wishes to give public comment in support of the bill.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to testify in support on AB 338, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Once again, if you'd like to testify in support on AB 338, please press star 9. Chair, there are no callers in support at this time.
Okay, let's go then to anyone wishing to give testimony in opposition here in the room first. Anyone? Don't see anybody here, so if we could go online, see if anyone wishes to give public comment in opposition.
If you would like to testify in opposition on AB 338, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition.
Okay, thank you. Anyone wishing to give testimony in neutral here in the room? Don't have any. Let's go online, see if anyone wishes to give comments in neutral.
If you would like to testify in neutral on AB 338, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in neutral at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's come back here. Before your closing comments, let me ask a real quick question. Did you work with the Treasurer's Office on this? So if you'd put some comments on the record. I don't know if we have somebody from the Treasurer's Office that wants to put anything on the record. You push the button.
David Orentlicker for the record. I did work with the Treasurer's Office, and they're comfortable with these changes. The other thing, just in terms of, I've indicated that this brings us in line with other states that have a minimum single A. It also, in our statute, when we set the minimum credit rating for investing in domestic corporate bonds, that's at single A. So it's consistent with that as well.
Great, thank you. Any other closing comments?
No, I appreciate your hearing this, and if other questions come up, please let me know.
Great, thank you very much. All right, we'll go ahead and then close the hearing on AB, I've got it right here, AB 338. And we will open the hearing on, let's see, I'm going to go to AB 109. Assemblywoman Gorla, welcome to the committee. And whenever you're ready, go ahead and start.
Thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon, Chair Dennis and members of the Senate Education Committee. For the record, my name is Michelle Gorlo, and I represent Assembly District 35 in Clark County. Again, thank you for your time and allowing me to present Assembly Bill 109. This bill makes changes to required licensing of charter school teachers who provide instruction. To provide a little background, this bill originated in the Legislative Committee on Education over the interim, which I had the pleasure of serving on this with Chair Dennis and Vice Chair Dondera Loop. Currently, Nevada Revised Statute provides that all special education and English as a second language charter school teachers must be licensed, and at least 70% of charter school teachers must either be licensed or have subject matter expertise as defined in statute. Charter school teachers for specific subject areas, including but not limited to English language arts, mathematics, and science, must be licensed or have subject matter expertise. Current law defines subject matter expertise as a person with a degree, license, or certificate in the specific field in which they are teaching and at least 2 years of experience in that field. The statute also differentiates how a teacher may demonstrate experience and qualifications based on whether the school they are employed has shown consistent performance at or above 3 stars on the statewide system of accountability for public schools. Assembly Bill 109 strengthens the licensing requirements for charter school teachers. This bill does so by increasing the total percentage of teachers required to possess licensure or endorsement, mandating teacher licensure in certain courses of study, and eliminating subject matter expertise as a qualifying standard. Specifically, Section 1, Subsection 1 increases the percentage of teachers providing instruction who are required to hold a license or endorsement to at least 80% and removes any reference to qualifications through subject matter expertise. Chapter 391 of NRS establishes the rules and procedures governing endorsements through the Superintendent of Public Instruction. There are a variety of endorsement types ranging from special education to business and industry endorsements. Each endorsement has its own qualifications. For instance, business and industry endorsements require instructors to have at least 5 years of work experience. On the whole, endorsements were designed to grant access to instructors with non-teaching backgrounds and often act as temporary placeholders for out-of-state teachers. Section 1, Subsection 2 provides that teachers at career technical charter schools must also hold a license or endorsement to teach such courses. Section 1, Subsection 3 mandates teachers in core academic subjects to be licensed. As per NRS 389.018, core academic subjects include English language, arts, mathematics, science, history, geography, economics, and government. Further, Section 1, Subsection 5 requires that a person teaching special education or English as a second language must also be licensed. Section 1, Subsection 4 provides qualifications required of a teacher hired at a charter school who does not hold a license or endorsement. Finally, Section 8 allows teachers employed by a charter school who are not licensed as of July 1st, 2021, to continue to teach without a license until July 1st, 2026. And with that, Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions? Senator Hammond?
Sure, I'll take a swipe. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this bill, it seems like there's a lot of, this is what you need to get into the classroom. What we're seeing now is really a drying up of the teacher pipeline, right? You see a lot of young folks who don't want to get in the teaching profession, or they're just not there and they're not getting through the system, getting in. We're having a heck of a time getting teachers into a school, whether it be charter, whether it be public, or any other type of school with a CTE endorsement or CTE license. So your bill is telling us how, to get people in there, but it's really more difficult. You're making it more difficult to get in there. Does the bill address how we could try and get more of them in there? I mean, that's the thing, is how do we get around things? We're looking at all kinds of stuff, getting folks from the professions, getting them from their jobs working in skilled labor and getting them into the classroom to give instruction. And we're looking at other ways. Can you give me some suggestions on how we can then get folks into the classroom? And does your bill still allow for that? For example, I'd love to see a teacher in the classroom, but somebody who knows what they're doing with welding. But you still have somebody in there. So we're gonna have to be creative to get people in there. Any other ideas?
Thank you for the question, Senator Hammond, and for the record, Assemblywoman Michelle Gorlow. And you're correct, there is a pipeline of teacher shortage that we do need to address. This is making sure that those that are teaching are qualified to teach. That's the intent of this legislation. There are various alternative licensure routes that people can go. In the instance when you're talking about welding, that would be a business and industry license that they can obtain as long as they have that 5 years of experience so that they know what they're doing. Because like you mentioned, a welding teacher, there aren't many people that are actually going to go into teaching specifically for welding. Those are people who have been doing it for many years and want to share their expertise with other students so that they too can go on into the field of welding, which, as we've all been hearing, there's a great need for that. So for those, again, it's a business and industry endorsement that they would obtain for those type of fields. And again, there's alternative licensure routes that people who are interested in making teaching a second career, they can go that route as well.
So would this bill still allow somebody to teach and go through the ARL, or do they have to get the license before they can get in there? Do they have to go to the program first and get it? Or are you trying to make sure that they're not in the classroom until after they get the license, even if they're in the ARL program?
Section 8 will allow the teachers that are employed by the charter school who are not licensed as of July 1st, 2021. So as of that, they would definitely have to have the license. If they were hired tomorrow, they wouldn't have to, but they would have to have their license by July 1st of 2026. And I'm sorry, Assemblywoman Michelle Gorlow for the record.
And just so that the record's clear, this is a bill that actually came out of the interim committee, that was voted out of the interim committee, and so you're just presenting it today. So, just so because I know he referred to it as your bill, but it's really a bill that those of us who were on that committee we did the research during the interim. Okay, other questions? Yes, Senator Buck.
Thank you so much, Chair Dennis. I'm actually kind of disheartened by this bill, to be honest with you, because we are facing such a huge teacher shortage. I know I worked with UNLV to figure out, and Nevada State College to figure out the teacher pipeline. And so I guess my question is how many substitutes or non-licensed experts are sitting in district classrooms? Because I always am very sensitive when we pick apart charter schools that are innovative. We have EMTs that are coming back and we're hiring them to teach paramedic skills. And it just disheartens me that we have to tell them, oh, you need to go back to school to teach when they're wanting to teach math. And we have doctors that want to teach math and science. We have pilots that want to teach aviation. We should be making this easier for teachers to enter the profession. So I'm just wondering how many substitutes or non-licensed experts are in ELA, core classes, math classes in our districts.
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Michelle Gorlow. That number I do not have. That would be something that perhaps Clark County School District or Washoe School District would happen to have. I can try and find that from them. But currently, both charter and public schools do require that any of the core classes, such as mathematics, that they do have a license. We do have Rebecca Fiden, who is here. She might be able to have some better answers for you on that.
If I may follow up, Chair Dennis.
Yep. Just remember that this bill is specific to charter schools, so I understand your questioning, but you're talking about a different thing, so I just want to make sure we don't get off track here with the bill.
And again, for the record, Assemblywoman Michelle Gorlow, this is making the standards closer in line with the public schools. So public schools have to have 100% license, and as you mentioned, there are some substitutes that might not have a teaching license, but they do have an endorsement. So this is bringing the charter schools closer to the alignment of the public schools.
Okay, yes, Senator Don-Doerloop. Vice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Assemblywoman Gorlow. So I'm going to put a few pieces of information in here, and then I'm hoping to also ask a question. And that is, we have several ways that adults can go into a classroom. So if you want to be an ARL teacher, you have a degree and you do it that way. There was a law put into place back in 2011, maybe, when I was in the Assembly, that if you were a health nutrition expert, you could go into the classroom and then earn your degree as you were in there. So there's several ways that licenses can be obtained. And I think what we're talking about here, if I'm not correct, please correct me. So this is my question. This bill is specifically talking about if I'm a second grade teacher and I'm there without a degree, right? We're saying now that person needs to have a degree. Am I correct?
For the record, Assemblywoman Michelle Gorlow, yes, that is correct.
Okay, so that's number one. We're not talking about the welding teacher specifically. Second of all, the welding teacher, the plumber, the electrician have all gone to school. And I'm here to tell you, I don't think I want an electrician putting in electricity in my house that hasn't been to school. So I think we need to value the teaching profession, And while I recognize that we don't have enough teachers, that's another bill that's in the pipeline in this certain session, the 81st session, that will help to develop that pipeline. So I appreciate you bringing the bill forward, and I think that we need to request people hold a license and an endorsement and value that because our kids deserve the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Dondero-Loop, and I think you make a good point. We do need to value teachers and the profession. There are a lot of people who know subject matter, but managing a classroom takes a special set of skills, and being able to explain your subject matter also takes a special set of skills. I know personally, and I'm sure many of us have had a teacher that were just brilliant in their topic, but getting it across to the student was a little lacking. So again, I agree, we need to value, and that licensure does show that value.
Thank you. Other questions? Senator Hammond?
Not really a question. We're making statements. I'll make a statement and say that on the opposite of that, Assemblywoman, I've also had colleagues that were great. They went and got their teaching license. They took classes in classroom management, knew how to put a test together. But when a student went down a different pathway, they didn't have enough subject matter expert to get into it. My point being that you don't know who's going to be a great teacher sometimes. Somebody will have some experience in life, and all of a sudden they can relate to kids. They can relate to them really well. Again, I just think that the bill is its intent is to try and get more people who have more education in the classroom, who know how to, manage the classroom. I understand that, but I just think that we're kind of going the wrong way because charter schools were put together to try and find a new model, trying to find new ways to get people in the classroom and get kids engaged. And I think that this is kind of disrupting that a little bit because we are allowing principals a little bit of latitude to try and find folks who want to go in there and teach. My colleague to my left is one example. She spent many years trying to find that parent who was in the classroom, who was doing a lot of things and was engaged in what they're doing. And she tapped into that resource and said, hey, how would you like to teach? So I just think that this bill is kind of going the wrong way. Thank you. I thought there's no question there.
Thank you. Senator Dondero-Loop, do you have a question?
I was just going to make a comment that while I appreciate what my colleague is saying 100%, when you take public funding, you take public accountability. And while I recognize what's being said and absolutely appreciate it, our colleague that is next to you also was a public school teacher and a fine public school principal before she went into the charter school. So she came with expertise that married that charter school program. Thank you. And perhaps Chair Ms. Fiden could come up and address this.
Yeah, I was gonna see if Ms. Fiden would come up because this bill came about because of testimony given to us during the interim. So if you would come forward maybe, and maybe we can ask a few questions just to make sure we're all talking about the same thing here. So let me start. When we had the testimony for this during the interim, I believe you spoke. And so what would be the need for charter schools to have this type of legislation?
Rebecca Fiden, for the record. Executive Director of the State Public Charter School Authority. First, I just want to be clear that I do sincerely think that clarifying this bill is important. The way that it's structured right now, the statute that allows for schools with certain levels of performance to do it one way and schools with certain levels of performance to do it another way, the subject matter expertise definitions, it is a little confusing, and I really appreciate the opportunity to clarify it, and I think to ensure high standards for the teachers. So during the session, in the interim session, we did provide some information to the Interim Education Committee, and at the time, there were approximately 2,200 teachers in State Public Charter School Authority sponsored schools. and 36 of those were unlicensed. This current school year, there are just under 2,456 teachers in SPCSA-sponsored schools, and 39 of them do not hold a license. So there is a very small number that fall into this category that don't have a license pursuant to Chapter 391. The majority of those are in your kind of non-core content areas. We see a range: theater, technology, yoga, a whole range of different topics. We do have a limited number that are in core content areas that obviously this bill would give them some time to come into compliance with the licensure requirements. And again, I think this is an improvement to the current law and really helps to ensure that those core content areas, there is a licensed teacher, and provide some flexibility for charter schools with some of those unique programs, the ability to have some flexibility in the hiring process.
So does this legislation, does this prohibit someone doing like the ARL program, for example?
Rebecca Fiden, for the record, my understanding is that an ARL license is a license pursuant to Chapter 391, so that once a person has that license, and to be clear, that comes with a number of provisions for coursework they have to complete and such, that once they have that license, they may still be in the program, but then they are qualified to teach in a district school or a core content area in a charter school as well. That is my understanding.
So they wouldn't, I mean, the way the ARL program works, you get that license up front and then you do the training, is that correct?
Rebecca Fiden, for the record, my understanding is you have to have some basic stuff covered, and then it's a provisional license that allows you to do some extra coursework. It's a very short-term license. I think it's just a few years that you have to complete the additional coursework.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Fiden? Yes, Senator Buck.
Thank you, Ms. Biden. I'm just wondering, so charter schools, are they outperforming in some areas for the state?
Rebecca Fiden, for the record, I can't speak to charter schools sponsored by school districts, but the charter schools sponsored by the State Public Charter School Authority, I think we've seen some very strong performance. When you look at star ratings, large percentage of our schools are 4- and 5-star schools.
Thank you. If I may follow up, Chair. So as a district principal, I know that I hired substitutes, and then, sometimes they choose to get their license or not. They were licensed substitutes. I know that occurs across our districts. And even though we say 100%, I know that's where we're always striving, but that it just is not realistic at the time where we have, as a state, 1,000 to 1,500 different openings each year in some districts. And so I think this bill will be counterproductive. It actually, because we see that there's more satisfaction with charter schools, with our teaching staff. And so how do you see this not foresee this as pulling teachers and teacher talent from district schools that need them the most to these charter schools?
Rebecca Fiden, for the record, again, I'll note that this bill isn't about substitute licenses or ARL licenses or any specific type of license. We only are aware of approximately 39 teachers that are not licensed at our schools at this point, and many of them are not in those core contents. There are some that would be impacted, and my understanding is the bill allows a runway, a period of time for those individuals to get licensed. So it's a pretty narrow subset of individuals who would be impacted, and there is a time frame for them to be able to become licensed.
Chair Dennis, just for the record, so there's thousands more sitting in second grade classrooms in our district schools is my point. So thank you. I just want that on the record.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you. So I think we'll go to those that are, and thank you, Ms. Fiden. I think we're going to hear from you probably a lot today because we're talking about charter schools. Anyone in the room wishing to speak in support of AB 109? Don't see anyone in the room. Okay, let's go to online, wishing to give testimony in support of AB 109.
If If you would like to testify in support on AB 109, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 500, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin. Once again, caller with the last 3 digits, 500, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
My name is Sawyer Ross, and I am in 5th grade and a part of the Carson Montessori Student Legislative Team. You originally changed the charter school teacher certification requirement from 70% to all. That could have been disastrous. I am a student attending a charter school. I am fully in support of the amendment, amending it from all to 80%. Amending it to 80% gives the teachers more wiggle room. If there is someone working toward their degree, it will give them a chance to get in-class experience. Today, with a teacher shortage, we need to give potential teachers every chance we can get to get certified. My teammates with me today will discuss this further.
My name is Hayden Cruz. I am on the Carson Montessori Student Legislative Team, and I'm 5th grade. I am in support of AB 109, giving teachers 5 years to get their teaching degree. This gives them more time to learn. For example, at Carson Montessori, many of our para-pros go on to become teachers. A second example is in the Carson City School District. The director of a special education started as a paraprofessional. She now has her doctorate. Giving teachers 5 years is enough time for an employed teacher.
For the record, my name is Hank Brown. I am in 4th grade, and I'm a member of the Carson Montessori Student Legislative Team. We are in support of the section of AB 109 that allows industry professionals to step into the classroom and teach their trade. Who better to share their knowledge and expertise than someone who has successfully made a career in a given industry? Like Senator Hammond, I believe how lucky would we be if a welder taught us how to weld, a general contractor taught us basic carpentry skills, or a real chef taught us how to cook.
Hi, my name is Peter Logan McKenna, and I'm a part of the Carson Montessori Legislative Team. In summary, my teammates and I are in support of AB 109's new amendments, but only if it doesn't become more restrictive for charter schools. We like giving individuals working on completing their teacher licensure 5 years to complete this process. What a great motivation. Also, changing all to 80% needing a licensure is a positive. We would love to learn from trade professionals that support our unique school settings. We, as charter school students, are the most affected by this bill, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. We miss you guys not being able to be here with us. I know you've testified in the past, so I appreciate that. Okay, let's go to the next caller in support.
Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Okay, let's go to those that are in opposition. Anyone wishing to give testimony in opposition here in the room, come forward. We do have one here, so we'll take that testimony first and then we'll go online.
Thank you. My name is Erin Phillips, for the record, ERINPHILLIPS. I'm the president of Power to Parent. We represent 10,000 parents across the state of Nevada. Thank you, Chair Dennis, for the opportunity to testify in person today. I'm usually picking up my daughter from preschool while I'm on the phone waiting to testify, so this is a nice experience. Many families have taken advantage of the high-quality education provided by charter schools across the state of Nevada. In fact, there are thousands of students on wait lists all over the state hoping to be able to access the unique community and nuanced education that these schools provide. Even as amended, though, AB 109 seems to be a solution looking for a problem. There are excellent programs at charter schools that are tailored to the needs and the interests of students, as you've heard some of these students that just testified. For example, if a charter school has a pilot training program, they can hire a pilot to teach the students. These people are experts in their field and do not need to go back to school to become a licensed teacher. The burden on these schools that this legislation would impose is unnecessary, especially in the light of an already problematic teacher shortage, which has been mentioned already. Parents believe that charter schools they should continue to maintain their autonomy to meet the individual needs of the students that they serve. And so we urge you to vote no on AB 109. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Any others here in the room? Let's go to the next one in opposition online.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to testify in opposition on AB 109, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 577, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Chris Daly, D-A-L-Y, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. NSEA opposes AB 109 as amended, seeks an amendment to restore language as introduced to require all teachers who provide instruction at a charter school to be licensed to teach in the state. During the last legislative session, as well as the interim NSEA push for greater accountability for charter schools, our advocacy included the issue of licensure of all charter school teachers to help level the playing field between charters and neighborhood public schools, while also helping ensure every Nevada student has access to a highly qualified teacher. NSEA was heartened by the introduction of AB 109 by the Interim Committee on Education, spoke in strong support at the Assembly Education Committee. Unfortunately, the bill was watered down to lower the requirement to 80%. While it still requires teachers in core academic subjects to be licensed, we believe this requirement should apply to all charter school teachers. During this committee's discussion of SB 126 related to the library, strong statements were made about the need for licensed librarians in all public schools. Consistent application of this position should extend to classrooms in charter schools. Regarding the profession of teaching, educator leader Linda Darling Hammett has said, quote, "Teaching is the profession on which all other professions depend." It's a pretty wide and deep basket of knowledge that teachers need to have. They need to understand how people learn differently. They need to know how people develop in social and emotional and academic and moral and physical ways, and how all those areas of child development interact with each other. They need to understand the relationship, for example, between emotion and learning. Teachers also need to know how to build a curriculum that gets kids from wherever they are to the curriculum goals we have for them. They need to understand assessment, not only how to give a test and give a grade, but also how to assess how kids are learning, and then either reshape the teaching or help students revise their own work so that they can improve. Look, great teaching takes so much more than just subject matter expertise or even excellence in another field. AB 109 recognizes this and honors the profession of teaching and the educators who have committed significant time and energy and rigorous study and practice to become great teachers. Finally, I would just say, look, this language as introduced would not restrict if you had someone who had excellence in music who could come in as a guest lecturer or in an assembly. It's just a matter of who is responsible for education and learning in those classrooms. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 486, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Hi, good afternoon. Alexander Marks, M-A-R-K-S, with the Nevada State Education Association. This afternoon, I'd just like to read a couple of comments submitted by some fantastic members of ours who oppose AB 109 as amended and support it as introduced to require all teachers who provide instruction at a charter school be licensed in this state to teach. From a member up north, all students deserve a rigorous and quality education supported by highly trained and qualified teachers. Students at charter schools are no different than students in a public school in this respect. It seems like basic common sense to insist that a teacher at a charter school is held to the same standard as a teacher in a public school across the entire state. Why this already isn't law is beyond me and speaks to the disturbing lack of accountability of charter schools throughout the state. Teachers are teachers, regardless of the type of school that employs them. They should be held to the same standards, and in the state of Nevada, that means a teaching license. And from one more member, the art of teaching is a craft learned through study, hard work, and application in the classroom. Successful educators are those who have been trained in best practices, interpret student learning challenges, and respond to their unique challenges and needs to facilitate their success. Completing a credential program and participating in ongoing professional development is why students in public schools generally outperform their peers in charter schools. There is no substitute for an educator who has earned their teaching credential rather than they're just beginning a journey as their lifelong learner. Every student deserves to learn from a certified educator. We urge you to accept NSCA's amendment and substitute language for AB 109 is amended with language of AB 109 is introduced. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Chair, there are no more callers in opposition at this time.
Okay, let's go to those who wishing to give testimony in neutral.
If you would like to testify in neutral on AB 109, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to testify in neutral for the bill.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll come back. Before you give your final comments, I just want to make sure we get some things on the record, get that clear, because several people mentioned this. If you have a pilot that's going to come in and teach an aviation class, does this still allow for that?
For the record, Assemblywoman Michelle Gorlo, yes, it does still allow for that.
But if you have a pilot that wants to come in and teach science, then they would have to get a license. Is that correct?
Again, for the record, Assemblywoman Michelle Gorlo, yes, that is correct.
Okay. And then the other thing I heard from Ms. Fiden, this just clarifies the current language, which seems to be not clear as to who can or can't. Is that correct?
For the record, Assemblywoman Michelle Gorlo, yes, that is correct as well.
All right. And then I just see this as also with transparency and accountability. We hold we want to hold all of our schools accountable. So I see that as that. But all right. So if you want to give some closing comments.
Thank you, Chair Dennis. I think you really summed up the bill. So thank you so much. And I look forward to meeting with everybody and continuing to work through this bill.
Thank you very much. So with that, we will go ahead and close the hearing on AB 109. And we are going to open the hearing on AB 419. And we welcome Chairwoman Bilbray Axelrod with us today. When you are ready, go ahead and begin.
Thank you, Chair Dennis and members of the committee. I'm happy to be here, although virtually. I am in the building. I probably should come down, but I really enjoy wearing lipstick, I'm going to be honest. So anyways, good afternoon. For the record, I'm Shannon Bilbray Axelrod, representing Assembly District 34, and I'm here to present Assembly Bill 419 for your consideration. Also with me today are Deb Oliver and Jana Wilcox-Lavin. After my introduction of the bill and amendment, they will provide you with additional information and we will all respond to questions. This committee has heard testimony nearly every session since our laws governing chartering school were enacted in 1997 on how to improve our network of schools and their sponsorships, whether by school district or one of the higher education institutions or the state public charter school authority. This continual drive for improvement led me to bring you AB 419, which aims to further refine charter school governance in our state. So just a little personal background. I was as surprised as many of you were probably when I was named chair of the Assembly Education Committee, a role that I have just come to absolutely love, and I am so happy to be here. I have a daughter who has been a student at a charter school since the charter school opened when she was in 3rd grade. We were very happy with her school in CCSD. She went to Richard H. Bryan. It was a kind of a tough call, but some of the things that the charter offered to her, like arts integration, was really exciting, and we thought we would try it out. I have been extremely happy. But that being said, I think at least my theme this year for the session is accountability and daylight. And I think when things are going well, if you can just kind of shine a bright light and show what you're doing and let people see, I think that just makes everything better. So, you know, we get criticized, even the legislature, because our building was shut down. And so I always feel like I go out of my way to make sure all our committee amendments, everything is up on Nellis as soon as possible. So really people can see that we are being transparent. So when I came in, AB 419 had been pre-filed, and I took that opportunity to add a few things that I had been thinking about for several sessions. And I think what we landed on is a really, really good bill for charter school governance. So let me go through the bill in detail. In Section 3, the sponsor of all charter schools, not just the SBCSA, are required to establish standards of governance of a charter school so that governing bodies have a clear understanding of the performance benchmarks and targets that must be met for their school. Additionally, members of a governing body will need to complete training before the opening of the charter school and every 3 years thereafter. Speaking of training, it's essential that members of the SBCSA are up to speed on their responsibilities and duties, how to evaluate applications to form charter schools, and charter school governance. Section 4 requires SBCSA members to undergo training to establish their competency in these areas. During the last session and over the course of the interim, stakeholders expressed concerns regarding educational management organizations, EMOs. And the next bill that you will hear, 420, seeks to do something very simple and really define them, because I found out that people have a different idea of what an EMO does. So regarding the EMOs and the lack of transparency regarding their finances and business activities, despite being paid with taxpayer funds at public charter schools. So Section 5 and 6 require a charter school's governing body to disclose information regarding those service providers, including charter management organizations and EMOs, and post certain information and details online. Once again, daylight, accountability, transparency. Specifically, Section 5 requires that members of the charter school governing body post the definitions of CMOs and EMOs on their website, and provide if the school is operated by a CMO or an EMO. Once again, transparency. Section 6 requires in subsection 1 that a governing body of a charter school that receives services from an educational management organization post on its website each fiscal and performance audit and certain information about the charter school, CMO, or EMO contracts, and contracts information between the members of the governing body and the person related to a member of another charter school. We just want to see if people are related, and that's fine. We all sign them when we go, you serve on a charity board. You sign if you have conflict of interest or if you're related to someone. Transparency, accountability, daylight. Section 6 further authorizes the charter school to review information on contracts with EMO disclosed under paragraph B, and request that additional details be provided and an investigation to be conducted or other actions taken if necessary. Assembly Bill 419 also seeks to improve charter school accountability. That's what I've been talking about. Section 7 requires underperforming charter schools that have not requested a change in sponsorship to submit a report to the Legislative Committee on Education on the actions that the sponsor has taken to reconstitute the school's governing body or terminate the charter contract. The report must be submitted on the actions taken by the sponsor of the charter school that has received a 1 or 2 star rating in the immediate preceding 3 years. So 1 or 2 within the last 3 years. And I want to make that clear because people thought, was it 1 or 2 here and then 3 and 4 and then back to it. So it's within the immediate preceding 3 years. Section 9 of the bill requires a sponsor to consider the academic, financial, and organizational performance of a charter school that currently holds a contract with a CMO or EMO if the applicant is proposing to contract with a new school. These provisions also affect application to amended charter contracts to expand existing charter schools as provided in Section 11.3 of the bill. Finally, Section 11.7 requires a person who wishes to serve on a governing body to disclose to the sponsor of the charter school any conflict of interest. So this concludes my presentation at this time. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Deb Oliver, who can talk about governance and what she can bring to the table. And I will also then she can turn it, that she'll talk about Section 3, and then she can turn it over with your permission, Chair, to Ms. Wilcox-Levin, who can talk about what they are also bringing to the table and what brought them to bring this bill. So, Mr. Chair, if that's okay, I will turn it over to Ms. Deb Oliver.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Dennis and committee members. I'm Dr. Deb Oliver, Executive Director of the Nevada Association of School Boards, or NASB for the record. I'm here today at the request of Chairwoman Bilbray Axelrod to speak to you about the benefits of strong school board governance. NASB has worked with the Nevada school boards, including the State Board of Education, to implement evidence-based, results-driven governance training, specifically the Silver State Governance, which is a framework based on research for board training and ongoing coaching, whose motto is student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. Having a strong, unified standard of board governance in place for school boards to opt into is going to benefit all of our Nevada students. Board meetings should have a student outcomes focus. One of the outcomes of Silver State Governance is for school boards to spend 51% or more of their agenda items and school board meeting minutes on goals that improve student outcomes. Specifically, this is what students know, demonstrate, and do. Inviting charter school boards to participate in Silver State Governance or other governance training programs would have an incredible positive impact on student achievement. Training supports these board members to know how and what to do in their role as a board member and during their meetings. To date, we have 5 public school districts and the Nevada State Board of Education that have gone through the initial 2-day Silver State Governance training. Our State Board of Education will be continuing with the ongoing coaching and have already begun with their visioning and goal setting sessions. An example of a school board's progress with specific training, that could be our Lincoln County School District. They began implementing Silver State Governance in February of last year. And through the COVID pandemic, this district has seen an increase in their student outcomes. They have had a focus, their school board has had a focus on student outcomes, and they are on target with their interim goals. And I'd like to note for the record that Silver State Governance still accounts for all of the guardrails and the compliance that school boards are required to do, such as their fiduciary responsibilities or maintaining compliance with state and local regulations. The ongoing coaching provided through Silver State Governance aligns these activities to the purpose of the board, which is to create an environment to achieve the best student outcomes for the students we serve. I just want to reiterate that evidence-based, results-driven governance training supports each individual member. It helps them to understand their role as a board, on the board, as a board member, and understand their impact on student outcomes of the students they serve. I want to thank you for your time. I will be available for any questions at your pleasure. And now I would like to turn it over to Ms. Wilcox.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod and Ms. Oliver. Good afternoon, Chair Dennis and committee members. My name is Deanna Wilcox-Lavin for the record, and thank you for having me today. At Opportunity 180, we are committed to ensuring that every kid has access to a high quality education that ensures that they graduate college and career ready, and that they're prepared to decide their own future. A critical lever to ensuring great school for every kid is good governance. We support the development and implementation of sustainable school governance models that are accountable to putting students first. The bill we're discussing today, we have affectionately termed training and transparency, and it has 2 key focal points, as you heard from the Assemblywoman's overview. The first is on good governance via training and other to increase information about increasing information about schools that partner with management organizations through increased transparency. The first focus of this bill requires the codification of governance standards for public charter schools and establishes the regular cadence of aligned governance. In addition, it formalizes parity with district school board training requirements for the State Public Charter School Authority. Across the state, we've seen different types of public charter schools, single sites, and schools that partner with management organizations. Second focus of this bill, as we've heard, provides for increased information related to the relationships between schools and management organizations they partner with, including evaluations of the school's satisfaction on a semi-regular basis. In Nevada, we've had a lot of discussion about management organizations, and it's our assertion that increased information will help us address some of the questions that have been raised related to these partnerships. Recognizing that there's a proposed amendment for Section 3 that would allow for, in addition to the State Public Charter School Authority establishing standards, would allow for best-in-class governance training, some of what you heard from Ms. Oliver, as well as others across the country, to provide training directly to charter school boards aligned to those standards across the state. And in the case that those training requirements will have costs associated with them, we wanted to share with you all that Opportunity 180 was recently awarded a federal grant that can provide technical assistance support to the broader public charter school sector, including increasing shared best practices across all types of public schools, district and charter, as well as supporting governance training like we've talked about today and would be required by this bill. We will have those technical assistance funds provided for the next 5 years. So with that, thank you for your time and consideration on this training and transparency bill, and I'd be happy to support any questions as well.
Thank you very much. And I did want to just say for the record, Ms. Wilcox-Lavin actually made reference to some language that I am putting back into the bill. It was in the original bill. I had taken it out, and then through conversations, mostly because of the federal grant that Opportunity 180 was awarded that would allow them to pay for governance training. I did want to make sure that this was back in. I did email all members of the committee as well as the committee manager and policy analyst, but I was kind of late to that, so I apologize. But I was referring to it in my testimony without mentioning that original language is going back in, and we are just over the moon that Opportunity 180 was able to secure that federal grant and offer the governance training, which can be, thousands of dollars. So it's just kind of a win-win situation. So with that, I will open it up to questions, and I want to thank my co-presenters for being available today, especially Dr. Deb Oliver. I know you're so busy, so thank you for being here.
Thank you. And I'll just mention, we all got a copy of the amendment, and it's also posted on Nellis. So I just want to make sure for those that want to take a look. All right, questions? Any questions? Yeah, Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Dennis, and nice to see all of your faces, Ms. Wilcox-Lavin and Assemblywoman Axelrod. Bilbray Axelrod. Anyway, I really like and have been following, modeled from the Lone Star governance trainings and all that they're doing down there to bringing this Silver State governance here. So I just want to make sure and have that on record, seeing this from executive director perspective, as well as taking over from a receivership where there were academic and fiscal concerns. From a governance standpoint, I think this is great. I guess my concern is with the portion, again, where we actually have transparency in our school districts. I get that we're taking on the charter school sector again for transparency, but I would just love to add school districts to this. We know that we've seen in our different trustees situations across both large school districts that there are issues there, and hopefully those trainings will be occurring with that. But I'd also like to see, when it comes to an EMO, CMO, and the percentage of dollars, that's all in public record. I think it's okay that, that goes on the website also. But I would love to see this from the district perspective of how many dollars actually go to the schools themselves. Anyway, I'd like to see this bill add districts.
Shannon Bilbray, actually, for the record, thank you, Senator Buck. And I appreciate you and your unique perspective in that you have come from the school district into the charter. I know somebody else who has a similar path. I would agree with you. However, I don't think that this is the vehicle, and I would love to work with you over the interim. I do think there needs to be accountability across the board. So, but I think this is model language. I think that you'll see this language. I've already been reached out to other from other legislatures in other states, because I do think this language is really good. And I think we can take this and scale it up, which is obviously what we would have to do. But yes, I would 100% agree with you. I just don't think that this AB 419 is the vehicle for that. But as I said, I would love to work with you in the interim.
Other questions? And I realized that today I top loaded all the charter stuff just so that we could get all the experts here at one time. So this isn't just going after charter school all the time, right? Because we've got plenty of other ones that the districts, we've got trying to bring transparency into the districts in those too. So, okay, let's go. Any other questions? Okay, so let's go to those that are in support. Anyone here in the room wishing to give testimony in support? Please come forward. We do have one here, and then we'll go online. Welcome. When you're ready, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Dennis and members of the Senate Committee on Education. For the record, my name is Daniel Perot with Argentum Partners, testifying in support of Assembly Bill 419 on behalf of our client Pearson. We believe that learning is a powerful force for change and is instrumental in the development of children of all ages. Pearson offers a broad range of education services that ensure Nevada's educators have all the tools needed to teach our youth. We also provide high-quality learning services to support all students' individual education needs. AB 419 puts into statute practices that are essential for accountability while also streamlining charter school operations. For those reasons, we're in support of this legislation. I'd like to conclude our remarks by thanking the bill sponsor for bringing this important piece of legislation forward. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the room wishing to give public testimony in support? If not, let's go online. Anyone wishing to give testimony in support? If we could queue up the first caller.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to testify in support on AB 419, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in support at this time.
Okay, thank you. Let's go then to anyone wishing to give testimony in opposition. Here in the room, no one is coming forward, so if we could go online.
If you would like to testify in opposition on AB 419, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to testify in opposition.
Thank you. Then let's go to those wishing to give testimony in neutral. Anyone here in the room? Okay. Nobody here, so let's go online.
If you would like to testify in neutral on AB 419, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 577, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and you may begin.
Chris Daly, D-A-L-Y, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 120 years. NSCA is now neutral on AB 419 as amended, as its additional regulation of Nevada charter schools is no longer strong enough to merit our support. Over the last several years, NSCA has been calling for greater accountability controls for charter schools, including a cap on charter school expansion. While this proposal was not successful, the legislature passed a 5-year growth management plan for charters. Interestingly enough, while the Charter School Authority was developing this growth management plan, they approved nearly 5,000 new charter slots. Last month we found that charter school slots are projected to increase 8.6% in fiscal year 22 and a whopping 15.9% in fiscal year 23, while enrollment in neighborhood public schools remains relatively stagnant. We know the explosive growth of charters has been driven by deliberate billionaire-backed efforts to exempt charters from the basic safeguards and standards that apply to our neighborhood public schools. This growth has created an uneven dynamic, undermining local public schools and communities without producing an overall increase in student learning and growth. While the charter school authority has made some improvements since the last session, including actually conducting site visits, let's be honest with each other. The charter school authority is only now clearing a relatively low bar of accountability. While it is great the charter authority has just begun to address the baked-in biases against disadvantaged students, when looking at the overall charter student population, charter schools serve proportionally fewer at-risk students, English learners, and students with disabilities. Even with progress in new charter seats, there's no path for charters to achieve parity in the foreseeable future. We learned of the extent of the problems with the inner workings of charter operators and charter management organizations last June when the Nevada Current reported on a dispute between the American Preparatory Academy in Las Vegas and their Utah-based for-profit management organization. This included large payouts to education management organizations who the charter claimed provided little in terms of services and complicated financial relationships related to charter school facilities. But AB 419 does not address the issue of charter growth or the issue of student mix. And as amended, it no longer prohibits the operators of the lowest performing charter schools from opening new charter schools. Instead, it's a very modest reform when this situation calls for more sweeping change. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to the next caller.
Chair, there are no more callers wishing to testify in neutral.
Okay, so we'll come back to the Chairwoman Bilberry Axelrod. Any final comments?
Thank you very much, committee. I really appreciate that. And like I said, that's sort of been the theme of this legislative session, at least for me, is transparency, accountability, and good governance. And I think this bill does all of those things. And I look forward to working with my colleagues in the interim to, like I said, scale this up. Let's go further. Let's do it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. So with that, we will go ahead and close the hearing on AB 419 and go to the hearing on, make sure I'm in order, 420. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Dennis. I am, and the rest of the committee, Vice Chair Marilyn Dondero-Loop, and the rest of the committee. I'm Shannon Bilberry Axelrod, Assembly District 34 in Clark County, for the record, and I'm presenting AB 420 for your consideration. This bill defines the definition and entity that provides certain services to charter schools. I think we made a record in the Assembly committee. At least my colleagues were telling me this was a 7-minute presentation. So hopefully we can do the same. It's pretty, never would say it's simple, but it's pretty straightforward. So a little background, when you hear the phrase Educational Management Organization, or EMO, it sounds like the entity manages the school. However, these companies are providing a service as a vendor that are accountable to the governing body of the charter school that chooses to contract with them, hence the last bill. Nevada Revised Statute 388A.030 defines an educational management organization as a for-profit corporate business organization or other entity that provides services relating to the operation or management of the charter school, which is very broad and quite frankly open to misinterpretation. I found this was the case when I started chairing the Assembly Committee on Education, and the more I asked about the term, the more I found that different people had a different interpretation what an EMO was. So this is the bill that I bring you today. The bill revises the definition of an EMO to clarify and tighten the term to better reflect what these entities do and how they serve charter schools. So you can see in section 1 of the bill defines an EMO as a for-profit entity that charters with and is accountable to the governing body of a charter school to provide centralized support or operations, including without limitations, educational, administrative, management, compliance, or instructional services or staff to the charter school. That concludes my presentation, Mr. Chairman and members, and I'm happy to take questions.
Questions? That's Vice Chair Dunderloop.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod. Is this bill the one that, I know there were several, that's why I'm asking for clarification, because I don't see it. Is this the one where they have to comply and we have to know their financial bearing? Okay, that's what I
No,
thought.
Shannon Bilbray Axelrod, for the record, defines the definition of EMOs.
Okay, thank you very much. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure when it said compliance, management and compliance, that we weren't going there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Senator Buck.
Thank you, Chair Dennis. I'm just wondering if you could clarify for everyone what's the difference between a CMO and EMO. I think that it's important that the public realize the differences.
Is Rebecca Fiden still in the room? Shannon Bilbray Axelrod, for the record.
She is. Would you like for her to come forward and answer that?
I would like her, I think that would be an appropriate person to answer that question. I could find it, but I think she would.
Ms. Fiden, welcome back. If you could, yeah, I think you heard the question. If you could answer.
Sure. Rebecca Fiden, for the record. CMO refers to what's nationally a charter management organization, and that is defined in Nevada revised statutes as well. And that refers to a nonprofit organization that provides similar services, whereas an educational management organization, or EMO, is a for-profit entity. So typically they provide similar services. These organizations can provide a wide range, and I think the definition speaks to that with the language about not, without limitation. But generally, these are centralized services, so not talking about your landscaper, not talking about, the folks who provide your cleaning, or maybe you purchase curriculum from, but some sort of centralized services. And again, CMO, or Charter Management Organization, is a nonprofit entity. EMO, or Educational Management Organization, is a for-profit.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions? All right. Let's go then to anyone wishing to give testimony in support of AB 420. Nobody here. If we go online.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to testify in support on AB 420, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to testify in support for AB 420.
Okay, let's go to those wishing to give testimony in opposition. Anybody here in the room? Nobody coming forward. Let's go online.
To testify in opposition on AB 420, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers for opposition at this time.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to anyone wishing to give testimony in neutral. Nobody here in the room, so if we go online.
If you would like to testify in neutral on AB 420, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to testify in neutral at this time.
Okay, so we'll bring it back to Chair Bilbray Axelrod. Any closing comments?
Thank you. I don't have any closing comments. As I said, it was a very quick bill in the Assembly, and that's a very rare occasion. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate seeing you all.
Thank you very much. So we'll go ahead and close the hearing on AB 420. Was that less than 7 minutes? Okay. All right, we will now open the hearing on AB 68. And we have Ms. Fiden is going to present this bill. Welcome now as a presenter.
Thank you, Chair Dennis, Vice Chair Dunderloop. Rebecca Fiden, for the record, Executive Director of the State Public Charter School Authority. For this hearing, we have provided you with a brief one-page overview of Assembly Bill 68, and my presentation will follow that summary. Assembly Bill 68 does 3 main things. First, it adjusts the timeline for action on new charter school applications. Existing statute requires the State Public Charter School Authority to consider an application for a new charter school within 60 days of receipt of the application or on another mutually agreeable timeline. The review process for charter school applications includes evaluation against the State Public Charter School Authority's application rubric, a capacity interview, as well as soliciting input from the local school district. Section 1 of Assembly Bill 68 proposes extending the timeline for action on new charter school applications from 60 to 120 days. This will ensure sufficient time for robust review, including input from our local school districts. The second change proposed in Assembly Bill 68 is clarifying the provisions for termination and closure of charter schools. While the State Public Charter School Authority does not close schools very frequently, it is a critical accountability tool. And when we do close a school, it is important that we are intentional and thoughtful because school closure has substantial impacts on students, families, teachers, and communities. As you are aware, charter schools are subject to a performance contract, and statute includes 2 contract termination provisions. One mandatory, in which the sponsor, such as the State Public Charter School Authority, has no discretion. The other is permissive and outlines circumstances where the sponsor may terminate a charter contract and close a school. This bill, specifically sections 4 and 5, propose that both termination statutes, the mandatory and permissive, be able to be applied to a specific campus or the elementary, middle, or high school within a campus if there are variations in performance. As you may know, some charter school contracts cover multiple campuses, such as Pinecrest or Matter schools in Southern Nevada. And some charter contracts cover a full K-12 elementary, middle, and high school. This change would allow the sponsor to target the closure to a campus or the elementary, middle, or high school that is persistently underperforming, rather than being bound to act on either all or none of the campuses or components of the school under the contract. To be clear, this would not require the sponsor to parse out the elementary, middle, and high school or the campuses. Rather, it would allow discretion if appropriate. For example, if a charter contract covered 5 campuses and one was persistently underperforming, despite repeated improvement efforts, while the others were high performing, the sponsor could close the one campus that was struggling rather than close all 5. I'll briefly note that there was one minor amendment to this provision in the Assembly. Previously, the language referred to grade levels, and we've clarified that this language is not intended to be used to close a 3rd grade or Miss Robinson's 3rd grade class. Rather, it is intended to be aligned directly to the star ratings, which are done on an elementary, middle, and high school level. And so that language, grade levels, has been replaced in the version that you are looking at, the first reprint, to make clear that it's only a full segment of a school that could be addressed here. The last concept in Assembly Bill 68 relates to schools approved to be rated on the Alternative Performance Framework, or APF. Before I get into specific changes proposed in the bill, I'll provide some brief context on our APF schools. As you know, all Nevada schools must be rated on the Nevada School Performance Frameworks. In other words, they must be given a star rating. However, a school may also apply for approval by the State Board of Education to be rated on the Alternative Performance Framework. These schools typically fall into one of 4 categories. Schools offering credit recovery programs for students that are severely credit deficient, behavioral programs, juvenile detention facilities, and then special education schools serving students with significant identified disabilities. More specifically, in order to qualify to be rated under the Alternative Performance Framework, at least 75% of students must meet one or more of the following criteria: have been expelled or suspended, have been a repeated disciplinary issue, be severely credit deficient, be under court supervision, or have an individual education program or IEP. There are 30 schools currently rated on the Alternative Performance Framework, and most of them are district schools. However, there are 3 charter schools rated on the Alternative Performance Framework. One is an SPCSA-sponsored school called Beacon Academy, and the other 2 are district-sponsored charters. I'll note that the executive director of Beacon Academy joined me for the presentation to the Assembly. Unfortunately, she was unable to join me today, and so I will do my best to answer any questions you have about that school or the Alternative Performance Framework. Returning now to Assembly Bill 68, Section 2, 3, and 4 seek to recognize the noticeable difference between a typical school and a school approved to be rated on the Alternative Performance Framework in Chapter 388A. As I mentioned earlier, there are 2 contract termination statutes, one mandatory and one permissive. The mandatory statute requires the sponsor to terminate the contract for a school that earns 3 one-star ratings within a 5-year period. For any typical school, this makes sense. However, for an alternative performance framework school, particularly one like Beacon, that serves severely credit-deficient students, a 1-star rating may not tell the whole story. That is, in fact, the reason they applied to be rated on the alternative performance framework, to have additional indicators that shed light on other measures of performance. So Assembly Bill 68 proposes to exempt alternative performance framework charter schools from the mandatory termination statute. To be clear, a sponsor would still be able to close these charter schools, as they would still be subject to the permissive termination statutes. The final change proposed related to alternative performance framework schools has to do with contract amendments. A charter can request a contract amendment for a variety of reasons, for example, to increase enrollment, to change locations, or to add a campus. Existing statute requires the sponsor to deny certain amendment requests due to poor performance. AB 68 would exempt APF schools from the required denial of an amendment request. And to be clear, our board still has discretion on amendments and can still deny a request. This change would simply exempt these schools from the requirement and the mandatory denial. Ultimately, both of these provisions related to the alternative performance framework schools would allow sponsors to honor the APF data, not relying solely on star ratings for those schools that have already been approved by the State Board of Education to be rated on the alternative performance framework. With that, I am happy to take any questions.
Okay, questions? Let me start. When it comes to the alternative performance framework, this makes it so not anybody can, just so that we're clear, not anybody can be that, right? They have to go through a process to become that. Is that correct?
Rebecca Fiden, for the record, that is correct. There are first a set of criteria that must be met, and second, a school must be approved by the State Board of Education to be on that list. So right now there are 30. In addition, a charter school has to have their sponsor's approval in addition to the State Board of Education's approval.
Thank you. Yeah. Vice Chair Donderloop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Fiden. So could you please go over section, I think this is where you were talking about, section 2, subsection 6, where you were talking about the APF pursuant to 385A. Would you, am I clear that they're exempt from the star rating because of the students they're serving? Could you clarify that for me a little bit?
Thank you, Rebecca Fiden, for the record. So federal law requires that each state have a rating system and that every school be rated. So by federal statute, Beacon Academy has to be rated on a star rating system, and most recently was rated as a 1-star school. Their graduation rate is very low because they serve students who are in 11th grade coming to them with very few credits, or 12th grade coming with very few credits. So what the APF does is we think of it as providing an additional layer of information, right? Additional data that helps us to better understand the context of that school. And what this section would do would be exempting them from mandatory denials that are tied to star ratings. That would allow our board, again, those mandatory denials make sense in the case of a typical school. A school that has 3 1-star ratings in a 5-year period should mandatorily be closed. However, the star rating does not tell the full story for an APF school, and so it removes them from the mandatory components, but continues to allow those permissive pieces so that our board has discretion on those critical decisions.
And just as a follow-up, couple follow-ups. Number one, is that the same within the, because these are generally in Nevada, either school district or state-sponsored charter schools, is that the same in our public schools?
Thank you for the question. Rebecca Fiden, for the record. District charter schools have to be rated on a star rating, and if they are an APF school, they also receive an alternative performance framework rating. There are no closure provisions for a district school, so that circumstance wouldn't come up. But I do think that all of these schools, the intent behind the APF is to look at a broader set of data that allows us to better understand the performance through the lens of the population that they serve.
Okay, great. That answered both questions. Thank you.
So just to clarify, the purpose for this particular thing would this in I should say section 2, subsection 6, where it talks about the alternative performance framework. That's we want to encourage some of these schools to work with this subset of students. If we didn't allow for this, then they would just automatically be closed after 3 years of 1 star. So by being able to exempt them out of that, they can continue to serve those students and not fear that they're going to be closed because they're serving the students that we want them to serve, right?
Rebecca Fiden for the record. That's absolutely right. One of the important parts of charter schools is that we seek to serve all students and that we provide innovative ways to do that. And so Beacon Academy is certainly providing a innovative option for students in Clark County who have experienced a number of different challenges in their educational career. And again, yes, we don't want that school to automatically be forced to close. Our board, I believe, should be able to look at the data from the APF, from other things, and determine, okay, do they need to close or not, and look at that fuller picture rather than be bound to the mandatory termination statute.
And this would not, by making these changes, that still wouldn't prohibit the board from looking at all that data and saying, yeah, you're an APF, but we're still going to close you because you're looking at the data, right?
Rebecca Fiden for the record. So there are really 3 categories of things that would constitute a reason to close a charter school. One is academic performance. One is organizational performance, which is things like compliance, legal compliance, and operations. And the third is financial. The permissive termination statute would continue to apply to all schools, including schools on the alternative performance framework. So certainly our board could opt to close a alternative performance framework school. Again, the exemption is strictly to the mandatory piece.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, so let's go to anyone wishing to give testimony in support of AB 68. We do have someone here, so we'll go here first. Welcome, and go ahead when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Erica Valdraz with the Vegas Chamber, ERICAVALDRIZ. The Chamber is in support of AB 68. The Chamber supports diverse educational opportunities for the students, such as charter schools in Nevada. We believe this bill continually supports student achievements and the well-being of our students. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee, for your time. We urge your support for this bill.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the room wishing to give public testimony on this bill? Okay, so let's go to those online wishing to give testimony in support of AB 68.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to testify in support on AB 68, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to testify in support at this time.
Okay, let's go to those wishing to give testimony in opposition. Anyone here in the room? No one is coming forward, so let's go to those online.
If you would like to testify in opposition on AB 68, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you. So let's go to anyone wishing to give testimony in neutral here in the room. No one. So let's go to those who are online.
If you would like to testify in neutral on AB 68, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers wishing to testify in neutral at this time.
Okay, so we'll come back. Any closing comments?
Rebecca Fiden for the record. No follow-up comments. If anyone does have any further questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you very much. So with that, we'll go ahead and close the hearing on AB 68. right, and we'll go to the next item on our agenda, which is public comment. Anyone wishing to give public comment? Make sure I have the. We'll now open it up for public comment. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per person. Please remember to state and spell your name for the record and indicate your affiliation, if any. So BPS, if you could queue up the first caller.
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to participate in public comment, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair Dennis, the public line is open and working. However, there are no callers at this time.
Okay, anyone in the room wishing to give public comment? Okay, we have none. Okay, we have no further items come before us. Our next meeting will be Monday at 1. With that, we are adjourned.